Good morning, everyone. My name is Jocelyn. I'm the program leader for Masters of Design here in LaSalle College of the Arts, and I will be your moderator today. As we begin today's event, I would like to introduce you to our plenary session and discussion, where we have the privilege to invite Ms. Dawn Lim, the Executive Director of Design Singapore Council with us. Dawn has been an influential leader in shaping the design landscape in Singapore, and her work has been instrumental in positioning design as the key driver of innovation and national identity. In her session, Singapore, a nation of designers, a nation by design, will explore how Singapore's design ecosystem has evolved. She also will look at how design continues to play a pivotal role in shaping not only our city's future, but also our identity as a nation. This session will offer us valuable insights into the intersection of design and nation building, and also how the power of design influences cultural, economic, and social transformation. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ms. Dawn Lim.
Good morning. Good morning. How is everyone doing? How many of you are jet lagged? That's quite a few hands. How many of you walked over here from the hotels that you were staying around? That's a good 2/3 of the room. So for those of you who flew in from all over the world to join us today, a very warm welcome to Singapore. I feel a little bit of pressure being the first speaker of your entire conference for a couple of reasons. All your welcome speeches actually said they wanted to know the intangibles of this country, what makes this country tick. And then Jocelyn goes, well, you know what, she's the Executive Director of the Design Singapore Council. We manage the whole design ecosystem. And now I feel I need to give you some tourist introductions and recommendations as well for your stay here. So you can ask me that during Q&A, and I'll tell you where to get some of my favorite food and where to go explore, because actually where LaSalle is situated, this district, is actually one of our most historical and exciting and interesting neighborhoods in Singapore. So you're actually in the right place where creativity blossoms every day. Quick introduction, Justin said hi for me, I'm Dawn Lim. I don't know if you can see, sorry, the design interventions, we should have done a slightly larger font size. And I run the National Design Agency of Singapore, the Design Singapore Council. We are a government-linked organization. Is this too dark?
Yeah, it's too dark.
It's a bit dark?
Okay, maybe leave it on.
I like to look good in my photos. So I said we are a government-related organization, and our job is to use design to improve the lives across economic and social areas, make Singapore a much livable and lovable place to live, and in that process, hopefully also influence the rest of the world to use design to make the world a better place. Sounds very lofty, sounds like, wow, how do you do this, right? So I'm going to take you on a little journey of Singapore and how we think about design in nation building. And this is why we are a nation by design, but also a nation of designers. Now I know a lot of you are educators in this room, a lot of you are presenting research papers too, so I am actually not a designer by training or by profession, but I really appreciate great design. And that's the thing about design. If it's really good, you don't actually notice it. But if it's really bad, you know it, right? And that's why your role as educators is super important. We are a nation of I just did a Google search yesterday because I wasn't sure what the number was, but we are now 6 million people on this small island that is about 734 square kilometers. What is that? It's 103,000 football fields, if that gives you a sense of how big this country is. We are an island, nation, country, city, state, all in one, right? Maybe with a few islands around, but literally this island you're on is all that we have. No natural resources at all. And in 1965, we got our independence from the British. 2025 this year marks 60 years of independence. So this is actually a big year for us as a nation, and we're going to be marking quite a few milestones of how the country has come. This image you see here is the Kallang Basin. It's not far from here. But everything you see here is on reclaimed land. Go back to the 1960s, it's water. And you'll see a lot of this in our architecture and our building master plan, where we had to reclaim land in order to build and develop this country. We are very small and dense, very multicultural, but we're also a powerhouse because we didn't have a choice. And that element of survival, the element of the need to design the country's future in order to be relevant, that is the DNA that we have. Come on in, have a seat. So one of the things that you may not notice about Singapore when you first come in is actually how much greenery we have. This is actually also by design. For an incredibly dense population, dense city, almost 50% of our country's landmass is green. Parks, forests, public park connectors, greenery along the highways and the streets. If you came from Changi Airport during the day and you came down the East Coast Expressway, you will have seen it was all tree-lined, right? All of that is part of our design intention to make sure that this doesn't become a concrete jungle. And we do actually plan ourselves to be a city in nature, not nature in the city. Not a garden. We used to be a garden city, but actually we have now embraced the integration of human life and nature as one. These are some of the images of our public parks in Singapore. Some of them are President's Design Award winners, which is the highest accolade that we award from the Office of the President for the best designs in the country. I want to just draw your attention to a couple of things. So on your top left is a picture from the Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park. And it's a public park, as you can see. There's a little river that runs through it. Children are welcome to play in it, right? You can wade and bring your dogs and all that. This river also acts as a flood control element for the area. It's low-lying, and so when they built the public park, they designed the river to be part of that landscape, but also to play an important role in the country's flood mitigation measures. And it's now a public space, right? You can see how our highways are designed over, so we protect the waterways as well. And Jurong Lake Gardens, of whom the landscape architect who did that won the Designer of the Year at the last President's Design Award. He told us that when they restored the gardens to its natural splendor and integrated it with the housing developments around it, they noticed that there were bird species that had left Singapore permanently that returned. So you can see how the deliberate intention of adding design elements to how we think about the nation actually makes a difference to the livability, the quality of life, right? And your daily and the impact on our citizens. Let's move to Changi Airport, one of my favorite destinations in Singapore. How many of you think of your own airports as a destination? Nobody, right? Yeah, but the 2/3 of you who've flown in to join us today, your first experience of my country would have been Changi Airport. And I hope you had a great experience. I'm seeing nods, right? And the funny thing about airports is everybody has a horror story about an airport somewhere. I have a few, right? And every time I come home to Changi Airport, I'm so happy. Because I know that, and I've timed it, in the fastest I've ever been, 7 minutes, I disembarked, got through immigration, I picked up my bags, and I was in a taxi on the way home. I see a lot of nods, right? Yes. That's a design process, everybody. It's not rocket science. It's the passenger experience that makes it so critical that you, as a guest visiting our country, whether the first time or multiple times, have that I want to say joyous experience of coming through our airport. Most airports make it really stressful for you. Already you're flying 12 hours, and you're tired, you're jet lagged, you're smelly, you've had somebody reclining your seat in your face, The last thing you want is to get to border control and you feel like they're gonna try and deport you at the first instance they have. Passenger experience so critical. Now why is that important for us? Because the airport is actually one of our biggest economic centers for the country. We are the biggest passenger transfer hub for Asia Pacific and one of the largest airports in the world. By 2035, 2036, we're now building our 5th terminal. We're a country of 6 million people. Why do I need 5 terminals? Right. We're going to be passing 135 million passengers through this airport every year. By the next 10 years, when we expand that, we've got 3 runways. We're in a closed door. Can I just make a joke and take this in the right way? Those of you who come from the UK, I used to live in the UK. In the amount of time it took for Heathrow and Gatwick to fight over who was going to get the 3rd runway, we built ours. And they haven't figured it out yet, the 3rd runway, so just saying. Now, this image here is Jewel in the airport. And I find it is one of the most marvelous internal interior architectures that we've ever done. The vortex here, while it's spectacular, it's Instagrammable, etc., it actually acts as a natural air circulation channel for the whole area. And every single green thing you see in here is a real plant. The Chief Operating Officer of Changi Airport has assured me that nothing green you see in any part of the airport is fake. Every single plant is real. Imagine the amount of maintenance that they need. But why is that important? Again, you bring biophilia inside the airport, right? It's natural air cleanliness, circulation, but also passenger experience. How does it feel like to come into an airport full of fake plants versus real plants? Right? It's the small details that matter. Jewel has also made it now a destination, at the airport a destination. That's why I said, who thinks about the airport as a destination? No one, but apparently we do. And so we've also created a situation where this to me looks a little bit like the Garden of Eden on Earth. Right? You step out from your airplane and you go and have a breath of air. Find an apple somewhere. Don't die while you're in it. My favorite part of the latest changes to the airport is the biometric immigration clearance. Right? So most of you have experienced that. You don't need your passport, you go right through, it's so easy, thank you very much. I don't take credit for that, but this is one of the things I love about the design elements that we put in, even at the border of our country. From the airport, let me take you into our community. And we are a rapidly aging population. In 5 years' time, in 2030, 1 in 4 of us will be over the age of 65, 25%. Our fertility rate just fell under 1 last year for the first time. This is a huge social issue. It's also a huge economic issue because you have a dwindling workforce, contributing workforce, but also the burden of healthcare and medical care on the state will continue to increase, right, as we have more complex age-related diseases. So how are we thinking about it? Today, a lot of care today that we think about the care system and healthcare system in many countries is focused on intervention at the point of diagnosis. You're already sick, we're going to intervene, right? But if you can think about if we were able to intervene 10, 20 years earlier, 30 years earlier, lifestyle choices, options, access to different resources, could that have changed the health outcomes decades later? And that's what we're doing today. So even as we take care of our elderly, we're also looking at how to empower our citizens to take care of their own health on their own. So let me start with our elderly. All across the country, you will see these active aging centers, right? The picture on the top is an example of one where you can see there's gym equipment and there's actually trainers who are specialize in training senior citizens in using this equipment safely to help them build up strength for bone density, for mobility, right? So that they don't fall so often. Even if they do, they can get back up again. We are democratizing this by partnering with the community centers as well as some of the private and social foundations. One of my favorite ones, it's called Gym Tonic. It's a bit earlier now, sorry. And it's run by a foundation called the Lian Foundation, and they work with designers to redesign the internal space so that it is elderly friendly, in a softer wall, so that in case that they fall, there's impact cushioning. Right? Alongside the active activity centers, we also have functional screening. So if you're an elderly, you can walk into any of these centers to get screened for a whole range of age-related diseases or just daily issues. And the staff and the nurses and the medical staff there are all trained to catch for elderly-related issues. And we know that the statistics have shown that social bonds are a really important part about aging well. It's the emotional health. The healthcare system can intervene on your physical health as much as they want. But to age well is also about having healthy community bonds. And in so many places in the world, elderlies are so lonely. They live alone, they die alone, nobody notices that they're gone until it's too late. There's a stench coming out from the apartment. It's a very, very sad situation. It's happened in Singapore too, and I think it's happening in a lot of parts of the developed world as well. And we prototyped the first integrated housing complex called Kampong Admiralty. Admiralty is just the neighborhood that it's in the north of the island. And then Kampong is the local Malay word for village. So we're bringing the village concept back into public housing. This is public housing, by the way. And I won't be spending a lot of time on public housing, but in Singapore, 85% of our population lives in public housing. It's not council housing as we know it in some of the other parts of the world. It's actually a way that we have put house ownership, home ownership, into the hands of our citizens. So it's public housing. And here, you will see, I'm sorry again, from the back, it might not be so obvious, but it's actually a multi-layered, integrated, multiple-use complex. So we have studio apartments here that are designed for the elderly. So they are enabled with holding bars, ramps, etc. Smaller studio apartments, right? And then outside is everything else they need to build a community. There is a medical center, there are 2 medical centers and an active aging hub, right? There's food and beverage, there's a supermarket, there's an open atrium, there's a community garden, because we want them to build bonds over planting their own plants, right? And actually what's really interesting is there is a childcare center. Why is that important? Why would we have a childcare center? Grandchildren. Exactly, grandchildren. So we also want to keep them close to their families. But a lot of elderlies today want to stay autonomous. Right. So this kind of gives a little of a happy medium between the two, where they can be close to their grandchildren, so the parents can drop the kids off, and the grandparents can pick them up in the afternoon, spend the rest of the day with them before the parents come and pick them up at the end of the day after work. Right. So this also allows the grandparents to be part of their grandchildren's growing up process, building social bonds and community bonds. One more thing that we're doing with redesigning care and healthcare, which is not on this slide, is we now have a national campaign called Healthier SG for Singapore. And in that, we are basically going back decades to those who are now in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm in their target audience. I wish I was in my 20s, but I'm in their target audience in the higher end of that age range. And basically to give me back, empower myself to take care of my health. So there's a lot of resources in there. They've gamified health, so you can actually win, you can get supermarket vouchers if you cover a certain number of steps, always a good thing. And there are many other programs. We've partnered with Apple so that you can, on this program called Lumi Health, it's an app that you can download. And again, It's so that we have national data on how different groups are responding to health interventions and encouraging them to go for their health checkups as well. So who is Design for? And I'm speaking to the converted in this crowd, right? All my slides before this talked about the recipients of good design, right? The community, international travelers, right? The country. But good design is also for designers. And at the Design Council, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to empower and grow the next generation of creative thinkers. The thing about creativity is that it's such a amorphous word. What is creativity? How do you measure creativity, right? Just last year, we're in February now, so I guess it was last year, Singapore emerged top in PSA scores for 15-year-olds across the globe. So OECD says that we have the most creative teenagers. We use the 15-year-olds as a demographic sample. But when we surveyed those kids, they're like, we don't think we're creative. So the measurement tool says that you're creative, but they don't think they're creative. So I have a gap here with creative competence and creative confidence. And without creative confidence, we will not get to creative courage, which is actually what this entire country was built on, going back 6 decades where we had nothing, and it was really just creative innovation of all sorts of solutions to get us to a first world country 6 decades later. So what are we doing? We are looking at interventions across every chain of the education value chain. It's fair to say that. So we're starting with the schools, the primary schools, the elementary schools. We're going into tertiary education. LaSalle is one of our partners here. Right? And then we go into the community. If you're a practicing designer, we've got something for you too, because whatever you learned in school 25 years ago, the world has changed a lot. You need to stay relevant, right? And then we also partner with the community, because design is not just for professionals. Design is also for everyone. So you can see a little bit more about all the different things. So let me take you a little bit into some of the details of what we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about this, and then I'll play a little video for you. So we start from the beginning, right? Learning by Design is our program that we run for general education, so 7-year-olds to 18-year-olds. And what happens here is the schools, the students, and in some cases we have partners, organizations, companies who come in, who provide a challenge statement, work on a very specific problem for a couple of weeks of their choice. So the kids decide what they want to work on. We had one secondary school, so that would be middle school, I think for some of you, where the kids chose to work on why the toilet paper always runs out in their school toilets. We all know that's a terrible situation to be in, right? And what we want to do is to help them understand that design is not just about all those big, hairy problems. You can use design to just improve your everyday life. Right? It's about creative competence and confidence in the everyday. If you're only waiting to build creative confidence when you have the big, hairy problems, I would never have an opportunity for the vast majority of our students to learn creativity. So we're going to play this little video of the kids who went through our program, just for you to take a look.
And our teacher go and let us portray the actor. We just think of a funny thing and then slowly see how they can link back to the picture in their heart.
Creativity is something that they want as part of their lives, but it's a way of looking at the world.
Quantity over quality. So we don't have one singular idea.
Go beyond that also.
没有力，想记住，让我这个 mind 的 trying to tell his friends to say that we failed. We just didn't succeed. There's a difference there. There's a difference there.
Wanting to know of industrial examples which were very, very precious to the students. They have shown what actually happening around the world outside the classroom setting.
Okay, this is a little snapshot of the Learning by Design program that we run. You can find us on, we have a whole website on that. We have made a lot of the materials and resources that we provide to the teachers also freely available. You are welcome to download them and use them and adapt them for your own purposes. We really believe in democratizing design education for everyone so that we can really build the next generation of creative thinkers. So here are some pictures of the kids who went through our program. And you can see we also involve the educators, it's an important part of it. We involve the parents as well because it's very difficult to help to change mindsets if they go home and then the old mindsets are reinforced. So it's actually an entire ecosystem of education that we work on. So I go from general education to tertiary education, right? That's where I think a lot of you come from. A couple of years ago, let me get out your photo. In 2020, in the midst of COVID, we decided with quite a few of our partners, our design educators, as well as employers, people who hire designers, that actually what Singapore needed was a North Star of the future of design education. And why not us? Because if you look at the DNA of this country, everything that we've had was by design. And so it's actually a mindset that's already baked into our psyche, this idea of try and then we keep trying and we keep trying because no one has done it before. And so this was the starting of our publication called the Future Design School. Nur and I see Elaine here, quite a few of our partners from the Institutes of Higher Learning in Singapore were part of this platform, and we spent basically 2020 to 2024, about 4 years doing this. We had a first report that was published in 2022. This is the second report that was published just last year, and again, it's free to download. Please feel free to go to our website and get that. But in it, we have put forth what we think from our experience could be a way forward for design education in Singapore, but also where relevant in other parts of the world. What is really interesting about this model is, unlike anywhere else in the world, I think, we were able to get different institutions to work together. So private, public, autonomous universities, they actually cooperated. Their students went across to each other's institutions to do boot camps. We had employers take on what we call a seamless career pathway. So they redesigned with the faculty that the students spend an X number of days in working on something in the company that was part of the curriculum and the requirement to graduate. And now that we've done a couple of these prototypes, actually we have the blueprint to scale this. So I encourage you, welcome you to invite you to download this and just tell us what you think as well. And then, well, once you start working, what happens? We've laid all this foundation, and then you go out into the working world, and okay, well, good riddance, good luck. The world has changed, good luck, right? The thing about design is that it's super relevant, especially in a chaotic world. But the tools have also changed, right? Those of you who are architects, you've learned what you did CAD drawings, there's AutoCAD, and now everything is, you can AI the whole thing, basically. The tools have changed, right? So what is the role of the designer in this world that has changed? Is there still a role? Of course, the design council, and I'm sure all of you agree, there is a role still, right? What we try and do here is to provide some guidance as to, well, how do you redirect your career if you're a practicing designer and the world has changed? What are some of the new skills that you need? What are the resources that you could tap into to upskill? Singapore loves this word, we upskill. So you could go for training programs, do certification programs. We direct you to where to find them. Right? And then we tell the employers, hey, these are the steps that could be helpful when you think about hiring designers if you want to provide them a proper career path in your company. And we call this a skills framework for design. We do this in conjunction with 2 other government agencies, Skills Future Singapore, as well as the Workforce Singapore. And we try and update it every couple of years, so we're in the midst of updating it now. But again, it is a public document. You can go down and see. We've laid out the entire career pathway for a designer. There are tracks depending on what you're practicing in. To the best of our ability, it's really hard to cover the whole spectrum, but we try our best, at least to provide with some guidance, some resources, right? So that they stay relevant. Then what about you and me? Well, okay, not you, me, right? So all of you are professionals but everybody else in Singapore, right? If you didn't get that design education in primary school because we hadn't started the Learning by Design program, maybe you didn't pick to do a design discipline when you went to tertiary, then what happens to you? This is where we go with a classroom without walls. So at the Design Council, we have a unit called School of X. And the whole purpose of School of X is to bring design into the community. So we've worked with community aging centers, we've worked with the Ministry of Social and Family, where we got youth to think about what their future could be, and then got them to be part of building that future. We got one of the neighborhoods here called Queenstown, which actually has a high proportion of aging population, and we got them to come together, all these aunties and uncles, through a design process to think about how to activate their community to get the seniors more engaged and participatory. So we're bringing design into the community, again, to build creative confidence and some creative competence out there. Everybody can use design in a small way, it doesn't always have to be a big way, to make their communities better. So I've sort of given you a bit of a 360 helicopter view of how we think about design in this country. There's so much more I could tell you. It just cuts across so many different areas of how we experience everyday life. On your left here is actually our shipping port. This is the future Tuas Megaport. It is again going to be the largest port because everything we do has to be bigger and better. And again, completely on reclaimed land, right? And then here you have just an aerial view of an example of public housing in Singapore, which in many countries looks like condos, but this is public housing. It's a building design. It's also social design. Right? And design is so present in how we think about the system, how we think about policies, how we think about impact. It's not always about just the physical spaces as well. Okay, so from whole of country, big, let me take you to, well, what about the future of designers? What do we do with the future of designers? I'm going to do a little spiel for Jin Lee. In case you don't know who she is, she's a local fashion brand, and her clothes are lovely. I'm not wearing her outfit today, but there's a shop. There are a few shops around the corner, so please go and patronize her. She realized that, look, we have a problem with fast fashion, right? So much waste from fast fashion goes into the landfills. How do we help people? How do we make only when people want to buy without waiting really, really long? And so they came up with this concept called Make. And there's a Make studio just around the corner from you at the National Design Center, where we are, 5 minutes, so you can go experience it for yourself. So Jin Lee's unique designs are actually her pleats. It is I think, patent pending design that she worked together with A-STAR, which is our national research agency, to come up with this pleated design that holds its shape. And what they did was, with the engineers and the scientists there, they came up with a little mini pleat machine that she could put in her shop. So she doesn't have to do it only in the industrial factories, right? And you go there, and you basically pick what color and what pleat design, just a few, that you want, and then they make it, or you make it, depending on how involved you want to be, on the spot. in the store, right? And it can be a whole workshop, it can be a bonding activity, where essentially you've taken what would normally be multiple SKUs in a fashion brand and created one SKU, which is a single piece of fabric, one color. It's a neutral beige or gray, one color, one SKU. You go in, you pick your colorway. They've developed, again with the scientists, these colorways that you could heat transfer. So these are just paper, special paper with different colorways. You heat transfer it onto the fabric, and then they put it in for pleating. One SKU, and it's highly customized, highly personalized. Right? So our designers are actually embracing new ways of making, of doing, and again, it's a different experience when you go into the store, when you go into a studio. This is Delta Electronics, which is, they do service delivery robots. And Delta came up with this service delivery robot called Aiden to service the elderly in their homes. So you'll see Aiden is trying to take the elevator and the lift to go up into the housing, public housing corridors. And you'll see actually in some of the older estates, the corridors are quite narrow. So they had to train the robot to be able to move aside. So when we saw, so he'll move aside, you see, I even gave him a he, his gender, I've genderfied him. He has moved aside, he can recognize if there's a wheelchair, how much space, right? But they didn't do this with scientists alone, they did it with the designers. Because what they realized was, well, all the technical functions were great, the elderly did not want to interact with this thing. It was scary. I mean, if you're in the 70s and this robot comes up to you and like, here's your medication. Right. So the designers actually helped them change the user interface and the user experience to encourage the elderly to want to interact with Aiden so that community care could be better resourced. And so Aiden is now being tested with one or two of the social agencies that deliver care, food, medication to some of the elderly who live alone in these estates, right? And well, they won an IF Design Award last year. And let's go into the future. Let me introduce you to Ray, right here. Ray is an Instagram influencer, and she's very cool. And around her, she's got the latest headphones from Razer. So if you're a gamer, Razer is one of the well-known equipment brands for gaming, Singapore company as well. And this is her Instagram feed. She's in a lot of very cool places all over Singapore at all the right parties. Guess what? Ray isn't real. I know, what? Ray isn't real. Ray is Singapore's first AI-powered virtual influencer. But she looks super real, isn't it? And look at all her feeds, it's like she's there, but she's not. And that's going to be our future, right? We are going to have AI in every aspect, right? Everyone talks about AI in every aspect of how our lives are going to be changed. But where is the human element in it, right? From Aiden, the service robot just now, to Ray, virtual influencer, the spectrum you can see of technology coming into our lives, and the role of creativity and design in making sure that it's relatable, it's still human-centric and human-enabled, and that we actually want to be part of this as opposed to being, oh, that's so fake, I don't believe that, right? So that's what we're also thinking about in Singapore, which is, well, you know the future is going in this direction. How can we make sure that it's safe and it's still fun and that everybody can be a part of it? I want to leave you with this quote from Jonathan Nolan, creator of the West Road. I think many people of you would have watched that. Season 3, episode, cannot remember, sorry guys. Season 3. If you watch at Westport Season 3, it's actually filmed in Singapore. So you will actually see some of the familiar iconic landmarks if you go there. And Season 3 is about, Westport is already about a dystopian future, but Season 3 is about a more dystopian future. And the creators basically were looking for a place to film this dystopian future. And they consulted Björk Engels, the renowned architect, and he said, you want the future, you go to Singapore. So John and Nolan said, well, we want to see the future, we'll go to Singapore. And that's how they ended up filming in Singapore. And I think this encapsulates the design DNA of this country, which is really about being very progressive, very futuristic, very fast-paced. I leave you with this last quote from our former Prime Minister, Lee Hsien Loong, where he said, Singapore is a nation by design. Everything we have was not natural, did not happen by itself. We thought about it, we made it happen. And I think that really is the spirit that we want to encapsulate here, about ensuring that design is accessible to everyone. The mindset is prevalent in our next generation, and we enable and empower everyone to help this country succeed. And with that, I leave you with Singapore, a nation by design, a nation of designers. Thank you.